Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to tell you a horrifying story which will haunt you in your dreams for a long time. So without further delay, let's start. It was the fall of 1976. Rebecca was 18, excited for her first taste of freedom as she arrived at college. She was assigned to an old, decaying dormitory on the far edge of campus. It was the kind of building no one really wanted to live in. Old pipes, flickering lights, floors that creaked under the slightest movement. But Rebecca didn't care. To her, it was just another adventure. As she dragged her suitcase down the dimly lit hallway, the air felt heavier than it should have, thick with a strange silence that made her feel uneasy. She passed doors with peeling paint and the occasional creaking from above. Finally, she reached her room, room 211. The door was already open. Inside, her new roommate, Karen, was sitting on her bed and packing a few things. Karen seemed normal enough at first, quiet, maybe a bit shy, but friendly. They exchanged small talk, discussed classes, and soon the awkwardness of being strangers faded. For the first few weeks, life was fine. Classes, dorm parties, late-night study sessions, it was everything Rebecca had imagined. But Karen started to change. It was subtle at first. She began skipping class, her side of the room growing messier by the day. She would spend hours sitting by the window, staring outside, her face pale and her eyes wide with a strange, vacant look. Rebecca didn't think much of it at first. Maybe Karen was stressed or homesick. But then, the nights came. One night, Rebecca woke to the sound of floorboards creaking. She opened her eyes and saw Karen standing by the window, motionless. The room was dark, except for the faint light of the moon casting a pale glow over Karen's face. She was just standing there, staring out into the night. Her eyes were wide open, her lips slightly parted, but she wasn't moving. Rebecca called softly, her voice trembling. Karen didn't blink, didn't flinch. She was like a statue, frozen in time. Rebecca called her name again, louder this time, but Karen didn't turn around. Her gaze was locked on something outside, something Rebecca couldn't see. When morning came, Karen acted like nothing had happened. She didn't remember standing by the window, didn't acknowledge the whispers she sometimes muttered under her breath in the middle of the night. Rebecca grew more unsettled, but she didn't say anything. She wanted to believe it was all in her head, but it wasn't. A week later, Rebecca woke up to an empty room. Karen was gone. Her bed was perfectly made, but her belongings were still there. Her books, her clothes, everything except Karen herself. At first, Rebecca thought she had gone to an early class, but as the day dragged on, Karen didn't come back. By nightfall, panic set in. Rebecca went to the dorm office, frantically asking if anyone had seen her roommate. The staff seemed confused, flipping through papers before delivering a chilling response. "There's no Karen assigned to your room." "What?" Rebecca stammered. "She's been living with me for weeks." The staff shook their heads. "There's no record of a student named Karen at this university." Rebecca's stomach dropped. She raced back to her room, her heart pounding, feeling like the walls were closing in on her. How could Karen not exist? She had lived with her, talked to her, shared the same space. But now, it was as if Karen had never been there at all. Desperate, Rebecca searched through Karen's things, hoping to find some clue as to what was going on. In a drawer under the bed, she found a small notebook, its pages filled with strange symbols and drawings. There were spirals, twisted faces, and incoherent phrases written in shaky handwriting. The deeper she dug, the more disturbing it became. And then, she found the final page. Written over and over again in red ink were the words, "Asterisk, asterisk, they're coming for me." Asterisk, asterisk. Rebecca froze, staring at the words, her blood running cold. Just then, she heard a loud thud from the bathroom. She jumped up, her heart racing, and crept toward the door. The bathroom was dark, the air suddenly much colder than before. She looked in the mirror, her breath visible in the freezing air. Fog began to form on the glass, slowly, as though something was breathing on the other side. And then, through the fog, a message appeared, as if written by an unseen hand. Asterisk, asterisk, too late. Asterisk, asterisk. Rebecca's blood turned to ice. She backed away, knocking over a chair as she stumbled. The room felt colder now. The shadows on the walls seemed to stretch, twisting into unnatural shapes. And then, the whisper started, faint at first, but growing louder, filling the room from all sides. Her instinct told her to run, but her legs felt glued to the floor. She turned to the mirror again, and this time, she wasn't alone. Karen's reflection stood there, staring back at her, but it wasn't the Karen she knew. This Karen was pale, her eyes hollow and sunken, her lips stretched into a twisted, unnatural smile. "Join me," the reflection whispered, its voice distorted, inhuman. Rebecca screamed and backed away. The door slammed shut on its own, trapping her in the room. The whispers grew louder, overwhelming her, filling her head with a buzzing, suffocating noise. Shadows began to crawl toward her, their movements quick and frantic, like fingers reaching out from the dark. In a blind panic, Rebecca grabbed her phone, dialed for help, but the line was dead. She turned toward the window and threw it open, desperate for an escape. Without thinking, she climbed out, her heart racing, her breath coming in gasps. She ran across the courtyard, never looking back, but as she reached the edge of the dormitory grounds, she couldn't help herself. She glanced up at her window. There, in the dark room, she saw Karen's pale face staring back at her from the glass, watching her escape with that same eerie smile. Rebecca never returned to the dorm. She dropped out of college, unable to sleep, haunted by the whispers, the face in the window. No one never found Karen. Her belongings were cleared out. Her name never mentioned again. It was as if she had never existed, but Rebecca knew the truth. She knew Karen was still there, in that room, waiting. And the whispers? They would follow her wherever she went, forever reminding her of that cold, dark night. Some stories are just too horrifying to be forgotten. And this one, well, it's just too real. If you've liked this video, subscribe to my channel for more scary and horrifying stories.